Yes, here we are. It's Wednesday again. We're talking about workplace wellness topics, and Linda and Alyssa are back with you at our new time. So hopefully you're either able to join us live or you can watch the recording. And today we are talking about managing difficult conversations. Oh, that can be a tough one, especially for highly sensitive people. Good morning, Alyssa. Nice to see you again.
Good morning, Linda. I know it's early for you. Thank you.
That's okay. So, difficult conversations. Um, I don't know, what can we say about that? Now, you did a little poll, I know,
Yes,
and the biggest issue that came up for people was knowing what to say. Is that right?
knowing what to
Yeah,
say, what
what
words to
words to
use,
use.
keeping calm and collected. That
Mm,
was like the second
mm,
one in the poll that people voted.
yeah,
That it's difficult sometimes, and
it
I
is
there
difficult. Yeah.
is there is a relationship there. And
Hmm.
what I can say is that from the way our nervous system works, whenever we feel we are in a threat, we are in an unsafe position, actually, we are in a stress response. And when we are in that fight or flight response, we don't think as well because actually 80% of our blood flow goes to our extremities for us to take action, to really
Mm.
get
Get
and
moving.
yeah,
Get
get
out of here.
moving, right?
Hmm.
So, of course, our critical thinking is not going to be a priority among other functions in our body, like our immune system, our hormones, our digestion. So, those are all shut down. So, no wonder picking the right words, no wonder keeping calm and collected. It's not really possible when you are in that
Mm.
stress response. So it makes sense. And it makes sense. And I think it's important to acknowledge that when we are going to have these difficult conversations, if we can have some time for us to just breathe, to take a few minutes to ground ourselves and to calm down, I think it would help us be able to choose our words, to come from a place of being calm and collected and not from a place of just like, being on that stress response that doesn't serve us because most likely we're going to say the wrong things, we're going to become more emotional, and we
Mm.
want to come from a place of being direct where we are talking in a we're choosing our words in a proper way. We're not just like saying things that may not benefit us at that time.
Yeah, I think you're right. Giving yourself some time is the best thing you can do because it gives you time to center yourself, calm yourself, breathe. And you're right, when you do that, that's when you start to be able to think more calmly and the right words can come. I think the worst thing you can do is react in the moment,
Mhm.
because that's when emotions are high.
Yeah.
And if you approach a conversation from that emotional standpoint, it's immediately going to make the other person feel defensive. So you're having an emotional conversation rather than having a factual conversation. I think the more you can give yourself time to kind of step away from it, calm down, and really then make a more considered response and stick to facts rather and trying to leave the emotion out of it, um, the better the conversation will go. I mean, yes, the emotions are there, and they are there for you to
Right.
deal with, right? For
Right.
you to deal with on your own, as we've talked about before. But that's not what you want to bring into the conversation, because your emotion will trigger the other person's emotional response, and
Mhm.
um, then it becomes a much more difficult conversation. So giving yourself time, some space before responding, is the ideal thing to do. Now, I do recognize you can't always do that. Sometimes the
Mhm.
response is needed in the moment. Um, So probably, and maybe this is where some, maybe you have some ideas of some tapping points you could use. But I would say, one thing I would do is not respond immediately, but just to take a moment, take a couple of breaths, and then respond. Because again, you're centering yourself more, and it's going to be a calmer sort of response to the person. But um, are there some tapping points that you could use to help with that?
Yes, if you are, let's say you're in a meeting and you're in front of other people and you're just caught on guard, you can always rub your fingers, for example, and nobody will notice. Like you can do this
Mm,
and take deep breath
okay.
and hold those points, your fingertips. That's one way. This is another powerful point. The triple warmer meridian, it's right on the back of the hand between the pinky and the ring finger. And you just can be like this
Mm,
and taking deep breath
mm,
and always focus on how you feel. Like, okay, by you saying this makes me feel, or I, instead of saying you make me feel, or you are
mm.
doing this to me. So I learned that from communication skills. It's always better to just, always talk about you, how this makes you feel, and how this is affecting you,
Yeah.
instead of pointing fingers to the other
Yeah.
person.
Or when this happens, or I one of the things when this happens, this is how I feel. Or
Yes.
maybe I know, maybe perhaps you don't mean it, but whenever you say a certain thing or do a certain thing, this is how it makes me feel. So I wonder,
Yes.
if because the other person may not know, they may have no idea
Right.
um, that they're having that what they're saying or doing is triggering the response in you. One
Right.
thing I do want to add, though, if you have a narcissistic person in your life, there is no rational conversation that you can have with that person. Trust me, I know this very, very well. They will, it's just the nature of it. You have to understand the nature of a narcissistic personality. But whatever you say, they will twist it around. They have their version of events. They are always right in their mind. They have their version of the truth, which is always right, and you will always be wrong. So there's no point. I have learned that they're really, I don't waste my energy on it anymore. Let them think they're right. I don't need to try and prove to that person that I'm right, because the only thing that does, if I put energy into that, is it harms me, because it will simply escalate. They are not in a place where they can have an honest conversation with you. So the only thing to do in that situation is take care of yourself and let go of the expectation or the desire that this person could ever understand things from your point of view. They won't. They can't.
No.
Right? It's part of who they are. So
Yes.
that's one thing I wanted to throw in there, because I mean, I spent a lot of my life thinking there was something wrong with me, because I could never have a conversation with this person. It always came back on me. It was my fault. Everything was my fault. And even something that I knew was true, they would tell me was not true. So, and then I started learning about what a narcissist is and what that means. And that was incredibly helpful. So I do just want to throw that in. So, with a non-narcissistic person, you can have a rational conversation, and the chances are high that as long as you present yourself in the right way, that they will understand where you're coming from, and you can make progress. You won't get that with a narcissistic personality. So I just wanted to add that in
No,
there.
it makes sense. It makes sense. And people that are not willing to have a healthy conversation, then it's better not to. And it's important to set those boundaries and
Mm.
understand when it is affecting you and when it's time to step away. and not get engaged.
Yes. Well, it's something I hear a lot from people is that they put so much time and effort and energy in trying to get someone else to see their perspective, to acknowledge them in any way, and it doesn't happen, and it's because the other person has a narcissistic personality, and so it's never going to happen. And so the sooner you can accept that and let go of any expectations that you have for that person to understand you or um, treat you any differently, won't happen. So yes, so pick and choose who you know, who you can have a
Yes.
conversation with. But I think that the biggest piece of advice is really give yourself the time and the space you need, isn't
Yes.
it?
Yes. One other thing that has helped me, I remember one time I somebody sent me a very nasty email, something that was not nice at all. And I wanted to respond right away, of course. But then I said, no, that's not gonna get go anywhere. So what I did, I wrote an email, but on my own Word document, and you can do it, in a piece of paper. And I just said whatever I wanted to
Mm.
say to that person. And then after I just dumping everything on that piece of paper, that well, in my case, in that Word document, then I felt so much better.
Mm.
That okay, now I think I can go and write the email that I want to write from another perspective. I mean, same perspective, but with better words and a better
Yeah.
message, being direct, calm and collected and to the point, but not from an angry and emotional place.
I love that. I often recommend that I usually sort of do it in the form of writing a letter to the person, which of course you're not going to send.
Mm-hmm.
And you can destroy it afterwards, whether you handwrite it or do it on the computer. But it really helps to get all the emotion out.
Yes.
And it's a very good way of dealing with that. And then once you've done that, sometimes you find that you may not even need to have a conversation with the person or
Yeah.
respond to them. But if you do, if you feel you do need to, you'll be in a much calmer state. And like you
Mm-hmm.
said, the words that you choose will be much more productive.
Yes. Yes. And it's a good action because you're engaging your physical body by writing, and
Mm,
you're like releasing that energy and
exactly.
then dumping everything that it's in your mind, in your monkey mind, all those
Mm,
thoughts, all those like emotions. Then you just like let it out. Another
yeah.
thing that I like to recommend is tap and talk. Like if
Yeah.
you tap through the acupressure points from EFT tapping and you just talk like you were talking to that person, it's a
Hmm.
very effective exercise.
Yeah, that's a good thing to do. Yeah, yeah. Make sure you're on your own probably when you do that.
On your own. Maybe you can go to the restroom and just
Yeah,
do
yeah.
it
Well,
there.
and I think one thing to watch out for, and if you're an overthinker, I'm an overthinker,
Yes.
and so I really have to watch that and learn how to calm my mind down. But sometimes what happens is you have these conversations with the person in your head, and they go
Mm-hmm.
round and round and round and
Mm-hmm.
round.
Mm-hmm.
It can stop you sleeping. It can drive you crazy, is what it
Yes.
can do. So it's better to have that conversation or to get that out onto
Mm-hmm.
paper, or
Yes.
if, like you said, to maybe go somewhere quiet and say it out loud, because
Yes.
you want that to get that out of here.
Oh, yes.
And also, if you've had a conversation, this is something I've done, and then afterwards you find yourself thinking, oh, I should have said this, and why did I say that, and why didn't I do this, and you second guess yourself, and constantly have that going round. Anytime you have that going, something like that going round and round and round in your head, I would recommend getting it out on paper, because
Mm-hmm.
it can drive you crazy. And also, I think the other thing I would add is sometimes, especially when the person's close to you, when somebody does something, or when you do something and the person reacts in a way you didn't expect, we all tell ourselves stories about what is happening, right? And those stories are not always true. they
Mhm.
did this because they wanted to hurt me in this way. And sometimes, I've done this with my husband. I've said, okay, you just said this. And I learned this from Brene Brown, by the way. And she this is a strategy she uses. She'll say, you said this or you did this, and the story I'm telling myself is it's because of this. And then the other person says, well, no, that's not it at all. So it can be helpful to address that, because then um, you can really show the other person and help them understand what it is that you're feeling, and then you can come to some common ground, because they may
Right.
not know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. I like that.
Yeah.
Address it that way. This is the story that I'm
This is the
playing in my
story.
head.
Yeah, this is the story I'm telling myself,
I'm
because
telling
that's
myself.
what we do.
It is. Yeah.
You walk past somebody that you know very well, and you say hello to them, and they ignore you, right?
Yes.
Now you can tell yourself, well, that person hates me. I've done something to upset them. That why are they being so
Yes.
so
And sometimes it's not possible. Sometimes
right?
you
Well,
don't have that
sometimes,
trust, or that, you're not close enough to that person to even say it.
yes,
So, but
yes,
you have options, and you can
yeah,
just write that letter, or you can just do the token
yes,
tap, like I
absolutely,
was suggesting,
yeah,
something to get that energy out. So it's
yes.
not bottled up and you keep thinking and thinking about it.
Yes, that's the worst thing you can do,
Yeah.
overanalyzing. I call it
Yes.
mental gymnastics. It's like our minds go all over the place.
Yes.
Anyway, I do believe our time is up again.
Yeah.
And I just want to mention that next week we're talking about multitasking, and
Let's get
how to,
productive. Should we do
yes,
multitasking?
yeah, and how to really focus and get things done. And do you need to
Yes.
multitask to do that? We'll have a conversation about that. So thank you once again, Alyssa, for this
Thank
delightful
you,
conversation.
Linda.
And I hope this helps somebody in some way if they have an upcoming difficult conversation they need to have. So
Yes.
we'll see you again next week at this same time, 8:30 Pacific, 11:30 Eastern, and we will see you then. Thank you
Yes.
very
Thank
much. All right.
you.
Take care, Alyssa.
Bye
Bye-bye.
bye.